Hi guys, I'm back again. Okay, so not having a drain plug on the transmission pan sucks. You definitely make a little bit of a mess, especially if it's your first time like me. Still drizzling. Screw it, I'll clean it up when I'm all said and done. Okay, so there is definitely no room to pull the pan without doing some things. So one guy said take the exhaust off. Yeah, that's one way, but you know, luck with those bolts coming off without some anti-seize or something. Sorry, I made a cut myself. Anyway, you know, those bolts just suck. So my recommendation, there are two 15 millimeter bolts that hold the training mount down across this cross member. Okay, take those bolts off. Get yourself a block and another jack. I wish my phone would focus a little better than this. Oh yeah, that's plank. And go to the transfer case. Now, I recommend you doing this before you even start to pull the pan, the transmission pan. Jack up the transfer case after removing the transmission mount bolts, okay? Then jack up the transfer case all the way until it stops. You should not hurt anything whatsoever. There's no wiring or lines that are going to be affected. I mean, as you can see, you only get about 1.5 inches, give or take 2 inches. Yeah, about 2 inches. That is not enough. So, I got a little creative. I got my jack handle because a pry bar is not long enough and it's dangerous because that's how I cut myself. So, to get a nice long tube of something, run it across this brace and then run it across that brace. Then get yourself a ratchet strap. This is a pretty heavy duty durable one, and I shortened it up a little bit because I knew I was going to run out. I mean, I'm right at the limits of where it was going to stop, but I just went around the exhaust, went around this pole, and then I cranked down all the way until I pretty much guessed if the training pan was going to come out, which, by the way, at this point I had already taken all my bolts out and made a giant mess everywhere. So the pan did not fall as I was cranking this down because the angle that the pan was falling this way, it still held itself on the transmission pieces itself. So all your gearing and stuff, you know, it's not going to fall. It's going to catch itself on the filter and it's not going to fall. But my advice is that you crank this transmission up first. Get those bolts off, crank the transfer case up so it pushes the transmission up, and then go over there and pull the exhaust down. Then take off all your bolts. When you do this, if you do not have a drain plug, if you're an unfortunate soul as I am, because you're going to make a mess if you don't have a drain plug, my advice is start on one end of the transmission, preferably the back. Remove all these back bolts and work your way both sides back and forth forward, because the further you get, obviously the transmission pan is going to start falling and it's going to leak out of this side. So you can at least have, if I would have timed this right, I could have probably saved this giant mess from happening, which I will do next time when I change the pan gasket and the filter after I run this for 1,000 miles to clean out the tranny and all the lines and stuff. So if you work your way on the back and work your way down the sides on each side, back and forth, you know, just let it do its thing. Let it drain into your pan. Get the biggest pan you can. I just got a $10 O'Reilly's pan. I don't even know how big it is. It worked though, if I didn't be a dummy. And then yeah, and you should be fine. And at that point, once it's kind of drained to a point, I actually used a little pump that I used for putting the transmission fluid in the T case. One of those little pumps. I actually stuck that up inside the pan and tried to pump out as much as I could, so knowing that I had to angle it even further to get it down, I wasn't going to make even a bigger mess because I had already made a big enough mess. I guess it wouldn't have mattered, but Pumping out some of the fluid before I tried to remove the pan entirely was definitely a nice option. Works very well. One little tip that I did, I actually, you can't see it. Come on, focus. So I numbered each bolt 1 through 15. I believe that there's 15 bolts, little 10 millimeter bolts. I labeled them, and then on the transmission pan itself, I also labeled it. So I labeled it, I labeled the bolt, and then right next to the bolt on the transmission pan itself, I also labeled the number, so I know where my bolts need to go, and I don't have to hold my schematic piece of paper in this dirty mess. It wouldn't survive. But I numbered each bolt, so I know, you know, my sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 15 had 80 inch-pounds of torque. So that was just kind of a helpful thing. I put 80 inch-pounds of torque on the pan itself on the very bottom, just so it's there, it's referenced, it's ready to roll. I don't have to look at anything. It's all right here while I'm down here working. Another thing I did, just because, I mean, I could see somebody doing something and trying to put the pan in backwards, I did put an arrow facing forward and put front. It's unnecessary. There's only one way this thing can go in, but it's just kind of a, you know, nice little added touch. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to clean up the gasket. I'm going to clean up the pan really well. I'm going to let this thing sit here and leak all over the frickin' floor because I don't have a pan big enough. That might actually help. But yeah, I'm just going to clean up the pan, clean up the gasket. Make sure you put the gasket in the same way it came out. I got mine sitting to where I know exactly how it goes back in. And then, yeah, just put in all the bolts, hand start all of them, you know, run them up until they're finger tight, and then probably do your torquing. And you'll be perfectly fine with that. And then I'm going to top, I really don't know how much I drained out. Obviously, that is not 12 quarts of transmission fluid. I didn't expect it to be. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, fill it up until, you know, I don't know, I'll probably start with like 4 quarts or something, see if it even reads on the stick while it's running and in neutral. And then I'll drive it around for a while until my temp gauge on the transmission says, you know, $160 or so. No aggressive shifting, no aggressive driving, just real casual light driving in case I am low on transmission fluid. You know, I don't have the money to replace one of these bad boys. That's why I'm doing this myself. It's $350 for them to do this. I can do it. I know how to, you know, I know how to work on a car pretty well. So after I get all that done, you know, I'll check it again, and I'll probably check it again tomorrow after I arrive to work. I'll stop, put in neutral, set my e-brake, and check it one more time, make sure it's nice and topped off. And then, like I said, 1,000 miles, I'm going to do this all over again, except for I'm going to change the filter and the pan gasket. But I'm going to come in here and clean this all up while I'm in here. Well, guys, I really hope that these videos did you some good. And good luck on your enduros. And hopefully, you know, if you have any questions, ask a mechanic or post a video, comment on any of my videos. If you have any questions, I'm sure we can figure something out together. All right, guys, have a wonderful day.